The untold story of John F. Kennedy's four children. They are arrivals in a legend. From the hush of Arabella's cradle that never sang, to Caroline's sunny ponytails chasing daylight across the south lawn. From John Jr.'s playful grin melting broadcast frames, to Patrick's breath forever borrowed, they each inhabit the afterglow of Camelot's promise, carried in soft shapes of hope and absence. John Fitzgerald Kennedy, 1917 to 1963. Born into wealth and competition, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was not supposed to be the family star. That was supposed to be his older brother, Joe Jr. But when war took Joe, destiny reached sideways. John, sickly, contemplative, brave, stepped into legacy's harsh spotlight. He survived PT 109, captured imaginations, and built a political career not just on ambition, but on charisma and myth. His voice, firm yet youthful, promised a new era. "Ask not," he told a nation, and they listened. He became president at 43, the youngest elected in American history. Camelot, they called it, a reign of art, intellect, and televised grace. Yet behind the glamour was a man riddled with pain. His back was a battlefield, his marriage a fragile arrangement of loyalty and betrayal. He was both idealist and pragmatist, faithful husband and flawed man, peace seeker and cold warrior. The children became his joy. Arabella's loss cut deep, but quietly. Caroline's laughter echoed down the halls of the White House. John Jr. brought levity to even the most somber rooms, and Patrick, brief, precious Patrick, was a reminder of everything he could not control. On November 22, 1963, the dream ended in Dallas. A motorcade, a gunshot, a nation broken. Jackie in blood-stained pink. John Jr.'s salute at the funeral. The world mourned a man who was more than a president. He was hope incarnate, and hope, once lost, leaves a silence that outlives sound. But legacy is not just what a man does. It is what remains in the lives he leaves behind. And for Kennedy, it was his children, visible and invisible, who carried forward the unfinished melody of his promise. Arabella Kennedy, 1956, stillborn. From the moment she was named, Arabella, there was promise, even poetry, in that name. It was Jacqueline's idea, poised yet reaching toward a future they both hoped to cradle. She was born into an era flush with optimism. John and Jackie, newly celebrated by the public, electrified by journalists' flashbulbs, their colors vivid, their laughter public. Yet Arabella was born still. The crowds never cheered, the cameras never clicked. Instead, there was a hush, the kind that carries grief in its velvet folds and lingers long after the voices fall silent. In that quiet room, Arabella slipped away, and with her, a fraction of their myth was forever unfulfilled. There was no first smile, no coo, no reaching fingers. Instead, there was only sorrow. Jackie and John held space for what might have been but would never unfold. The corridors of the White House, usually warm with ceremony, must have felt colder, that echo of silent longing woven deep into the early days of their marriage. Arabella's life, or perhaps more precisely, her absence, became the first crucible of their private grief, unseen by much of the world. It shaped Jackie's later reserve, the distance she'd carry, and John's awareness that public triumph could never guard against private heartbreak. Arabella's invisible presence glowed in memory, an intimate sorrow hidden behind polished images of Camelot. Though she left no footprints, Arabella cast a long shadow. She shaped the contours of what came next, the cautious tenderness, the quiet fortitude, and the emotional undercurrents that would define their family. In naming her, they claimed the space where she had briefly been, and in that claim, they honored an emptiness that spoke volumes. Her grave, unmarked for years, was finally recognized beside her father's, as if history itself had decided to whisper softly, "She was here." Caroline Bouvier Kennedy, 1957. They welcomed Caroline into the world on November 27, 1957, less than 2 years after Arabella's stillness. Caroline arrived with a wisp of promise and a bright-eyed curiosity that enchanted the nation. In her early days, she was captured running across the south lawn, ponytail swinging, laughter tumbling, tiny feet buoyed by childhood wonder. She was childhood made public, but somehow untouched by the glare. Cameras adored her, the public relished her innocence. Yet growing up as Caroline Kennedy meant growing into a symbol. She inherited a legacy as luminous as it was heavy. As Jackie and John carefully raised her amidst politics and headlines, they cocooned Caroline with love and a shield of normalcy. But destiny has a way of seeping through even the thickest walls. She learned to feel her father's absence keenly after November 22nd, 1963, when the laughter of those ponytailed days turned into memory. As she matured, Caroline walked a tightrope between grief and determination. She became the keeper of her family's story, not the myth, but the human truth. She pursued law, dipped into diplomacy, and translated public service into thoughtful action. Appointed ambassador to Japan in 2013 and later Australia, she carried both personal conviction and familial heritage into new spaces. As author and editor, she became a steward of history, shaping how Camelot is remembered, not as legend, but as lived experience. In later years, Caroline continued to curate memory with tenderness. She honored her mother's elegance, her father's idealism, while carving a path of her own. She balanced public tribute with quiet impact, steering foundations, funding the arts, and championing causes close to her heart. The daughter of Camelot, she grew into a custodian of its moral essence. Through speeches, diplomacy, and the preservation of cultural heritage, she became something more than a Kennedy. She became a symbol of endurance. In her steady gaze and soft voice, the echo of her father lives on, not through spectacle, but through service. And in the quiet confidence of her presence, the world still sees the little girl on the south lawn, all grown up, still running toward light. John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr., 1960 to 1999. Born just 2 weeks after his father's triumphant election, John Jr. entered the world on November 25, 1960. John, the infant prince of the airwaves. From the White House's Blue Room balcony, he waved to the world, already a vessel for hope. Families across America saw their own children in him. He was mythology's most charming avatar. Behind the smile, though, grew both lightness and shadow. As John Jr. learned to walk, he also learned the weight of his name. He was a living echo of Camelot, a happy emblem and a weary inheritance. He carried charm like a shield, deflecting whispers of grief, of loss, of expectation. His playful gestures, tugging at the president's lapels, beaming towards cameras, were both endearing and heartbreaking. As he matured, John Jr. moved elegantly across multiple worlds, socialite, Harvard grad, aspiring publisher. He launched George Magazine, a glossy intersection of politics and pop, intent on informing without moralizing. The pages slipped between narratives of policy and glamour. The magazine was in many ways his own story, the pursuit of identity, the tension between substance and spectacle. Yet there remained an ache, a longing for a father he barely knew, a brother he lost, a mantle he might one day wear. His life became a study in graceful balancing between celebrity and purpose, between myth and meaning. Then, on a clear summer evening in July 1999, his plane vanished. He, his wife Carolyn, and her sister vanished into Atlantic darkness. That absence, too, was heavy. A funeral on the beach, waves as witness, his casket carried past mourners silent with sorrow. In that final eulogy of life, John Jr.'s legacy was paradox. He was not a politician, but he remained political. Not a myth, but always mythic. He died young, but his untethered charm lingered, haunting the shared memory of a generation. His was a life lived just beneath the surface of the spotlight. Graceful, yearning, quietly extraordinary. Even in his death, he became a question we never stop asking. What might have been, had the sky stayed still? Patrick Bouvier Kennedy, 1963. August 7th, 1963, another summer morning, another new life. Patrick arrived, fragile as a whisper, born prematurely into hospital incubators and anxious hope. He lasted only 39 hours. From the moment he inhaled his first faint breaths, he was fighting against underdeveloped lungs, against the quiet cruelty of fragility. In those fleeting hours, Jackie and John lived again the duality of celebration and sorrow. They cradled Patrick against machines, numbered his breaths, watched monitors tick in time with hope and dread. Every small chest movement was both miracle and heartbreak. Across the country, headlines mentioned the birth of another Kennedy child. Few mentioned the impending farewell, but for his parents, every second was a lifetime. In losing Patrick, they learned grief anew, raw, more immediate, even as the world watched with muted sympathy. The president scheduled his state business, the nation's calm facade held. But behind closed doors, two parents mourned again. Patrick's death became an unseen turning point, an intimacy of pain that no public inquiry could penetrate. It reminded them, and the rest of us, that even those who seem most protected by history are still vulnerable to silence. In death, Patrick became a fragile apostle of compassion. His brief life intensified awareness of infant respiratory distress, prompting medical professionals and families to fight for better neonatal care. In that way, his gasp, the one that came and went, echoed beyond his crib, into hospitals and hearts across the nation. Even in death, he lived on as medical breakthroughs began to emerge, spurred by his silent cry. His name became a quiet banner for progress, and somewhere, in the intimate shadow between joy and loss, Jackie and John held space for all the words they never got to say. Each life, Arabella's absence, Carolyn's resilience, John Jr.'s luminous fragility, Patrick's fleeting presence, threads together into the fabric of legacy and loss. Camelot's children are not merely historical footnotes. They are intimate emissaries of love, memory, vulnerability, and quiet strength. In their stories, we are reminded that greatness is never born alone. It comes tethered to silence, to longing, to the softness of what is most human. If this glimpse into Camelot's afterglow moved you, subscribe and join us for more stories of forgotten heirs, overlooked moments, and lives shaped by fame and fate. These aren't just tales of history, they are echoes of emotion, what it means to be remembered, to be invisible, to carry a name larger than any life should hold. Every name you know had a child, every child has a story, and every story deserves to be felt. So stay with us. Let's remember them, one life at a time.